Russian aerial bombs are getting smarter before our eyes. The FAB with OMPC has gone the way Boeing took 5 years and almost $6 billion in 9 months, and the Ka-52 production vehicle with integrated product 305 is presented. And it's going to be a bomb, but first things first. Russian OMPC bombs were initially integrated only with the Su-34 frontline bomber. Now they can be launched from Su-24M, Su-30SM, and in the future from any Russian combat aircraft. Exactly 30 years ago, in the fall of 1993, the world's largest aerospace concern, Boeing, presented the first 3 copies of the latest smart weapons, built on the basis of rather old and quite low-precision aircraft ammunition. It's about the system, as you've realized, that only the lazy don't talk about now. Conventional 200 to 900 kilograms high-explosive bombs were transformed into relatively high-precision strike vehicles with the help of a GPS module and a set of movable wings. The reason for the appearance of GDAM turned out to be quite trivial and familiar to us. In order to do this, strike aircraft had to enter the range of Iraqi counterattack defenses. At the time of the First Gulf War, it was still quite alive and had landed more than 50 planes hard by the international coalition, including one B-52 Stratofortress bomber. Turning dumb bombs with a minor modification into smart bombs turned out to be an original, effective and quite budget-friendly idea. Here's a 200 kilograms GDAM bomb under the wing of a multi-role version of the F-16 fighter. Serious funds were poured into the program, and after the first submission Boeing began a long work on mistakes, for the presented GDAMs were at that time quite far from ideal. Over 5 years, the company conducted more than 100 tests and only delivered several completed kits of various calibers to the Department of the Air Force for testing by the end of 1997. It took almost 2 years to integrate these munitions on different types of North Atlantic Alliance strike aircraft. In parallel, work was underway to increase their accuracy. They ended just as the bombing of Yugoslavia began, and the unfortunate Serbs were the first on whom this extremely powerful and dangerous weapon was tested. Before the start of the next Balkan campaign, the US military claimed to have reached the 11-meter mark. That is, their GDAM from a distance of about 70 kilometers from the target hit a circle with a diameter of 22 meters. And such kits, judging by official sources of information, Boeing made almost 500,000 of them. It turns out that the first GDAMs were used during the bombing of Allied Yugoslavia, where no less than 650 bombs weighing 900 kilograms each were dropped on the long-suffering Serbian cities. Then they were used in all the NATO campaigns: Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, but the US still has colossal stockpiles of these munitions. We have already talked once about the reasons why Russian GDAMs, or rather planning and correction modules, appeared much later than their American competitors. Developments on this subject were carried out by the Moscow enterprise Basalt. The first tests of such bombs took place in the late 80s, but then came the 90s, at the beginning of which the Union collapsed, and that was it. Dozens of promising developments went under the table or were simply stolen by the new and then very smiling Western companies. And until what is called the last bell has not rung, no one really worried about it, hoping that air-launched cruise missiles and CABs, and in extreme case FABs from Soviet stocks, enough to conduct military expeditions like the Syrian one. But things took too serious a turn, and given the number of air defense assets the enemy had, it was only possible to influence the situation in the field by figuring out how to make the old high-explosive bombs accurate while staying out of range of Bucks, S-300s and other medium and long-range SAMs. In general, to shake off the dust from old developments and creatively conceptualize the American experience. The first image of the Russian guided bomb based on the very mass-produced FAB-500M2 was presented last December and became a wonderful New Year's gift for our bomber pilots. Over time, domestic WMDK bombs also began to look quite neat, indicating that the matter was put on the stream and they continue to be improved. Initially, our development looked somewhat artisanal and caused some unhealthy attempts at sarcasm and liquid criticism from foreign experts, especially from the British, who have not made anything themselves for a long time. It ran out literally a month after the first application. Yes, FABs with OMPCs were not as sleek and ornate as Boeing's products, but they did their job well, despite growth diseases. As early as May, mainstream American tech magazines like Drive were literally gritting their teeth that smartening up Russian bombs was becoming a serious problem. Apparently, having felt a good return in efficiency, our Ministry of Defense did not start to breed bureaucratic procedures, but financed this production from some secret funds. The production line for the FAB 500 was already set up by May, and by the end of summer 2 more types of these munitions based on the FAB 250 and FAB 1500 appeared. 1.5-ton bombs are now in the experimental stage, but they are already being demanded as much as possible. Fun items like the ODAP and the FAB 3000 are next in line. There are still several modifications of modules with different layout and are designed for all major calibers of our FABs. Thus, in fact, from scratch was started and put into mass production program, for which Boeing once demanded from the U.S. Department of the Air Force almost $6 billion and more than 5 years of time to finally bring the project to mind. It took our designers only 9 months to accomplish this. I don't know which folk wisdom is more applicable here, about the roast rooster or about the fact that someone harnesses slowly but rides fast. Fortunately, our defense industry has managed to prove once again that if it concentrates and doesn't feel hindered, it is still capable of a great deal. Well, another good thing happened. Alligator and LMUR are now together forever. The first production Ka-52 with integrated product 305 has been unveiled, and it's going to be a bombshell. The Ka-52 and the LMUR missile, the white missile on the launcher under the wing, are certainly some of the best weapons in their classes. But bringing them together has proven relatively difficult. The Russian Ka-52 Alligator attack combat helicopter, despite its obvious successes from the very beginning of its combat career, has been criticized quite often. Sometimes justified, but more often thrown into infraspace as an element of dirty competition. I remember the story about how 6 months after the helicopter entered service with the Egyptian Navy, a campaign to discredit the Kamov machine began inside Egypt. Let me remind you that in 2016, the country of pharaohs bought 2 Mistral-type universal landing ships for Russia from France with the money of Saudi sheikhs. Paris then unilaterally broke the contract, and now we can only jump up and down and rejoice that this is exactly what happened. All the more things turned out well, and our defense industry was able to make another wide step into the Egyptian market, lost in the mid-70s. The ships themselves were made exclusively for the naval version of the Ka-52, and Egypt's choice of our helicopters seemed more than certain. In addition, Egyptian generals had accumulated a lot of criticism of the Apache modifications that the US was supplying them. It was called a parade car because of its frankly poor quality and poor combat performance. The Kamov in Egypt, on the other hand, the first batch of helicopters arrived in the summer of 2017, flew in almost immediately and instantly began chasing North African Barmalis from Russia's outlawed ISIS in the Sinai. Egypt immediately started talking about a new batch of formidable Russian vehicles. And this is probably the only time that the Ka-52 and Apache were in service with the same army. The comparison of the two helicopters was not in favor of the American. And now someone across the ocean found this situation unacceptable. And tons of dirt was poured on the Alligator in local and then international publications. This campaign of lies was launched by the American aviation and military portal, Z Defense Block, citing, as is usual in such cases, unknown sources. As it soon turned out, the American publication was simply carrying out a marketing assignment for the mega concern Boeing, which now owns the HE-64 Apache trademark. A large batch of 42 cars was at stake, and Boeing was not afraid to go for outright forgery to destroy the competition. The point in this dispute was made by the head of the commission in the Arms Supply Service of the Egyptian Army, General Tarek Saad Zaghloul, who said that, quote, Ka-52 is the most modern helicopter of the Egyptian Army, fully meeting its objectives, tested by the battles in Sinai, and we do not care about the opinion of the press on this issue. End of stats. And then you know the rest. By doing minimal work on the bugs, the Alligator has become at least one of the best attack helicopters on the planet. And the only thing it lacked was a good helicopter-heavy missile with an inherent shoot-and-forget principle, like the American Hellfire, aka the British Brimstone. The LMUR is one of the most powerful helicopter missiles with Joule-like accuracy to date. Thanks to its increased range, the helicopter can operate not only outside the range of manpads, but also dangerous short-range surface-to-air missile systems. And at about the same time that the Egyptians had to defend the dishonored honor of our helicopter, Syria began testing the very missile that our helicopter lacked. This is probably the first time in my memory when the FSB, rather than the Russian Ministry of Defense, was the customer for such a serious weapon. Our counterintelligence officers used the Abandoned for Unknown Reasons project of 2007 and received for their special Mi-8 AMTS HVN, Sapson, helicopters an excellent tool, a multi-target missile, as versatile as possible, with fully automated targeting functions. And importantly, in the current realities with a camera in the head unit that shot a little movie before hitting the target. Thus was born LMUR, a lightweight multi-purpose guided missile, also known as Product 305. The movie, which was filmed for the FSB LMUR in Syria, where the missile often flew directly into the window of houses and hideouts of leaders of various bandit groups, very much liked our military. But there was a problem. Though called light, the LMUR weighed 105 kilograms, nearly 3 times the size of the Vortex and twice the AGM-114 Hellfire. Integrating it with relatively small attack helicopters proved to be a rather non-trivial task. The first such vehicle was the Mi-28NM, which tested LMURs in early 2022. Things got noticeably more complicated with the Alligator. It took a year and a half of trial and error to teach our best attack helicopter to carry up to 4 of these missiles at once. This is what the LMUR launcher on the Ka-52 looks like. She was clearly worth the candle. LMURs not only immediately became an excellent addition to the standard armament, but also significantly increased the functionality of the Ka-52, turning it into perhaps the most powerfully armed vehicle of its class. And the other day came the good news that the first production Alligator with special launchers for Product 305 has been produced, with a range of more than 15 kilometers, fully automated target acquisition and retention in a powerful 25 kilograms warhead. LMUR's work many of us saw last year in the excellent videos where the rocket was its own cameraman. There are fewer such videos in the public space now, but LMUR launches are constantly being recorded. And with the integration of Product 305 and its still mysterious sequel Product 306 on the Kamov, hopefully there will be even more of them. A lot of work has been done and such efforts will not go to waste.